Missouri, Alabama this weekend, Joe. I can already hear it. I can hear the Bama fans calling Paul Feinbaum right now and saying, we stink. Well, maybe you might. But Missouri have to come back in the thriller against Auburn. Brady Cook comes back from the hospital, literally. No, I'm not making that up. Comes back from the hospital, comes into the game, and he was able to find a way to lead his team to a victory. Alabama coming off a tough loss to Tennessee this past weekend. Your thoughts on this game, Bama and Mizzou?
I mentioned this in the open. Both these teams, it's really weird to look at how they've performed so far this year. And now Alabama's team stats are more impressive than Missouri's because they've played more difficult opponents so far. Alabama's problems are exactly as I've diagnosed them on film and also statistically. They are pretty explosive still on offense despite some what has looked like they've been having issues. All of their problems come down to one, they're not protecting Jalen Milroe well enough. They've allowed 13 sacks so far this season, which isn't a bad number, but certainly is not as good as this offensive line has been hyped up to be. But mostly importantly, I keep coming back to the penalties, 81 penalty yards per game, and it's something that is going to be constantly brought up that they're playing sloppy, undisciplined football. Yep. If they removed that, they'd have one of the best offenses in the country just in terms of points per game because they're throwing the ball at a really good clip. They're playing pretty good defense. Their secondary is pretty good, but they're putting themselves in these back-breaking spots where they can't overcome it because the penalties are too much. The Kendrick Law penalty at the end of the game is a perfect example.
That should have been a no call. That should have been
a
no call.
I agree, but I understand that, but a disciplined team doesn't fall for that bait, man. A disciplined team walks away from that.
Joe, it's a rivalry game.
I get that. I mean,
hold on 1 second.
Look, this is coming from. Hold on 1 second. This is coming from a long snapper who has 2 personal fouls for shit talking in college. Like I'm not even joking. Like I got into scuffles. I got 2 personal fouls. So I've got no room to talk. I was a damn good long snapper.
No business getting penalties. You should have been cut.
I got yelled at.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. We're allowing kids to pull out shotguns and shoot an opponent after a sack, and no flags are being committed or thrown. Yeah, spare me on guys in a heated rivalry or getting heated. Calm down. Stop making the game about you anyway. George, go ahead.
I just want to bring up here with Missouri that Missouri is in a very similar light here, that their defense is playing really well. But because they've been on the field so much and that their offensive line is playing like such shit right now, they can't protect Brady Cook. They can't get the ball out. They can't move the ball on offense.
I can't make my point after you just said that. And then
sorry.
Let me go to Alabama.
Okay.
Joe, do you think that Jalen Milroe's hurt?
Not necessarily.
He kind of came up limping after a big hit against Tennessee, and Alabama fans are starting to question, at least that I've seen on Twitter. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's right. It's not that he's necessarily hurt, like injured. Well, it's not. He's not injured. He's hurt. He's beat up. Okay. And it would make a little bit of sense the way that they're not running him. Joe, they barely tried to, after they got stopped once, they did not try to run him again. Right. He got tackled for a loss. Joe, they did not come back to a design run play. I wonder how beat up he is. And it's just a question that I'm having. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But, Joe, for me, it comes down to 2 things. Or one massive thing, but 2 things on this one. What team do you trust the most? Because I got to be real with you. Stats and all that stuff that we talk about, they're doing this team's doing that. Jalen Milroe's thrown 4 interceptions the last 2 weeks. Joe, my eyeballs tell me that Alabama's about to win this football game and that they might do it convincingly. I mean, before Brady Cook is out of the game, Joe, Auburn is doing some really damn good things against Mizzou. And they're throwing the ball against Mizzou. They're running the ball against Mizzou. I get that Brady Cook went down. It's a big deal. And I know that – and Auburn's just a bad overall football team. But the bottom line is, Joe, I just trust Bama more, man. I do think that they're going to be able to go in here and run the football. I do think that they're going to be able to have success offensively. I do think, Joe, for what it's worth, I mean, you saw what one very physical football team did to Missouri. Now you're about to see another one, and one that's pissed off. So I get that everybody wants to be down and out on Bama. Sounds cool. All right, cool. That D-line is still really freaking physical. That secondary is still very freaking physical. That O-line is still very freaking physical. Joe, my eyeball test, but when I watch both teams, I'm like, bro, if I feel like Bama's about to really roll here. However, to the second point here, okay, you brought up one key thing. You ready? Penalties. You know how you're keeping teams and you're playing up and down to your opponent? Penalties, undisciplined. That is what has happened. Not only Kalen DeBoer, Joe, we talked about this last night. That was happening under Nick. There's only one thing and a common denominator of why Alabama has been screwing up. It's you, the player. And nobody likes, oh, Blake's going after players. I didn't point any one person out. But one thing that I am going to do is you had the greatest coach of all time that was there last year for most of you, and then you had a coach that was in a national title game the year before. So it comes down to one thing for me. What are you going to do about it? The X's and O's is great. I love it just as much as the next guy. Now it's starting to come to the Jimmys and Joes. Who's going to line up and bust somebody in the mouth? Because when I watch Bama, I feel like that you're just undisciplined, and that is why you're losing football games in a lot of this. And not only penalties is it showing up, it's showing out in you being in the wrong gap defensively and so many other things that you're doing.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. I keep saying this. Alabama hits their ceiling if they eliminate the penalties. Like, it is clearly just one major thing that's dragging them down. But I don't know. It's easier said than done for that to be resolved and that to be fixed and them to move on from it.
Fair.
I agree with you, though, man. And Missouri fans, I'm sure you're not going to love this. I agree with you. I think that Alabama has every right to win this game confidently and handedly, and for this to be, I'm not calling this the get right, because last time I did it, they didn't get right in the manner that we were expecting them to.
Don't say that no more. Don't say that no more.
Missouri has already shown us a dud performance on the road. And I think
I mean, last week's performance is also a dud. Let's call it what it is.
Well, that was at home.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying. But I'm just saying,
I was talking about the
dud games.
Right, the Texas A&M game on the road, you didn't show up. The environment got to you. Alabama's home stadium right now, it's popping. It is rocking. We saw how much they impacted that Georgia game early. I think that they're going to be very present for this matchup against Missouri. But the biggest thing that I mentioned a second ago, man, that I do not have faith in, they've got all these weapons, but they can't get them the football. They've only allowed 16 sacks on the year, which is a bad number, but the scariest part is they allowed 5 to Auburn. 5. They got their asses kicked by Texas A&M. They can't block, and you're going up against a group led by LT Overton, Jahad Campbell, Deontay Lawson. We could keep going down and down the list of all the guys that they have on that defensive line. They haven't been hitting home with the sack production that you would like, but I know that they're going to feast like we've seen some of these other groups, and that is going to be a big factor in why I think Alabama wins this football game.
In reference to Mizzou, for me, you have the talent. You have the weapons on the outside. I feel like Eli Drinkowitz and Kirby Moore, they're trying to run their offense as if their offensive line doesn't suck.
Yeah.
You know, like you're trying to run a post pattern with Burden. You're trying to get Weiss on a double move. What are you doing? You don't have time for that. You got good enough weapons and a good enough quarterback. Joe, they should literally be dinking and dunking until teams back off of it. Until guys
did that plenty last year. I don't know why they haven't been doing a better job of that.
I don't know. I don't know. Joe, here's a philosophy that I live by, okay? And I did it against you when we played college football 25, okay? Joe, yards mean everything. If you get 8 yards and you get Luther Burden the football immediately, who knows what he's going to do with it? Joe, stats don't mean shit anymore. He's got to get 10 touches, okay? Throwing the football. Go full-on air raid. Go, Joe, I've seen Gus Malzahn throw 25 screens against Bama. I've literally seen it with my own eyes. Joe, by the way, they won. Nick Marshall and company won the football game. Get back to being who you are. Now, in reference to one thing, Joe, their O-line's really bad, man. It's really bad.
Yeah.
So